You hear more and more these days about investments trying to do, well, more than just make money.
Hmm.
There's this real, like, growing interest in putting capital into things that, also help the environment.
Right. It's a definite trend.
And that's exactly what we're diving into today.
Hmm.
The J.P. Morgan Asset Management's Campbell Global Forest and Climate Solutions Fund 2. Bit of a mouthful.
It is. But yeah, we've got some really interesting stuff here to unpack about it, what this fund actually is, why it's getting so much buzz, and what it tells us about that whole finance meets sustainability area that I know you follow closely.
Absolutely. And I mean, the first numbers you see are just, well, pretty jaw-dropping.
Huh.
This fund just closed, right? At $1.5 billion.
Yeah, 1.5 billion.
And that wasn't even their target. They aimed for $1 billion. So they blew past that by 50%.
Exactly. And then you add in some other accounts, separate ones, and the total capital raised jumps to, what, $2.3 billion?
$2.3 billion.
Okay.
Yeah. That level of investor enthusiasm, it really makes you stop and think, doesn't it?
It really does. I mean, getting 50% over your target like that, it signals maybe a pretty fundamental shift in how big investors are starting to look at natural assets.
A shift how?
Well, like maybe it's moving beyond just a niche interest, becoming more of a core thing to consider for your portfolio, especially in this climate-aware world we're in.
Okay, so let's dig into the details a bit more. This fund, it represents J.P. Morgan really stepping into forestry in a big way, right?
Mhm.
Follows their acquisition of Campbell Global.
Yeah, back in 2021. And Campbell Global, well, they're not exactly new to this game. They've been in timberland investing for like over 40 years.
4 decades. That experience has got to be crucial.
Oh, absolutely critical. It's not like JP Morgan just woke up and said, hey, let's plant some trees.
Right.
They basically bought decades of super specialized know-how in forest management, timberland investments. All that complex stuff is now inside JP Morgan. That experience is baked right in.
Okay. And the fund launched when? 2022, with that initial $1 billion target.
Yep, 2022.
The fact they smashed that target, it really seems to underline this growing appeal of, what did they call them? Climate-aligned real assets.
Yes.
Climate-aligned real assets. Yeah, it suggests investors are seeing something genuinely compelling there.
And connecting the dots, this move really shores up J.P. Morgan's position in, well, 2 big areas: alternative investments and ESG.
Precisely. For anyone cracking those trends, this is a big flag. It shows they're serious about integrating sustainability, not just as some side thing, but like core to their investment offerings.
So they've raised all this money, $2.3 billion total commitment. Where is it actually going? Have they started deploying it?
They have, yeah. The fund's already bought about 212,000 acres of timberland.
Wow, okay.
Spread across 3 main properties, looks like Pacific Northwest and the southern U.S.
So they're already putting boots on the ground, essentially.
Yeah, it's a significant early step. Gives the fund a real tangible base to work from.
And that geographic spread,
Yeah.
Pacific Northwest, southern U.S., sounds deliberate. You mentioned OECD countries.
Exactly. They're focusing strategically on these developed nations, places with, established rules, strong timber markets, and known for productive forests.
So it's a risk management thing, too. Diversification.
Uh-huh. Spreading the risk across different regions, different timber markets, makes the whole portfolio more resilient. It's a thought-out approach.
Now, who's actually putting money into this? Who are the investors? Sounds like a pretty mixed bag.
It is, yeah. Really diverse, actually. You've got U.S. players, international banks, European pension funds, insurance companies, other big asset managers.
That's quite a coalition.
It is notable. It sort of signals this widespread, growing comfort level with forestry as a real asset class among these, sophisticated institutional types. That's something you track, I know.
Yeah, and it feeds right into that portfolio diversification idea we talked about. It's not just the green angle, is it? These big institutions are looking at timberland to, well, spread their bets.
Exactly. And Jed Laskovitz over at JP Morgan Private Markets put it pretty well. He called it a distinctive investment opportunity.
Okay.
Said it lets clients diversify beyond conventional asset classes while generating income. And crucially, he pointed out timberland as an effective hedge against inflation.
The inflation hedge. That's always a big one, especially lately.
Definitely a major concern for investors right now, so that aspect is clearly appealing.
Okay, so we've got the what and the who. Let's really get into the how. What's the actual investment approach here? How are they mixing the money side with the environmental side on the ground?
Right, this is where it gets really interesting, I think, and it feels like an evolution. They call it a blended approach,
The blended meaning.
meaning it's not just about maximizing timber output like, old school forestry might have been. They're specifically targeting both sustainable timber harvesting and carbon sequestration, plus other environmental benefits.
Okay, so a dual objective. That feels different.
It does. It really marks a shift, I think, in how these kinds of investments are being set up.
So more complex than just cut trees, sell wood.
Oh, absolutely. It's about managing the whole forest ecosystem, producing timber responsibly, sure, but also actively boosting the forest's ability to capture carbon from the air, store it, protecting biodiversity in there, improving water quality nearby. It's a much more holistic view.
Taking the whole ecosystem value into account.
Exactly. All the different values these ecosystems provide.
And it sounds like they're trying to make this credible, not just, talk. They're using specific standards.
Yes, that's key. All the properties are managed under the Sustainable Forestry Initiative standards, SFI.
SFI. Right.
So for anyone interested in verifiable green credentials, SFI gives them a framework. It ensures that environmental care is built into how they operate day to day alongside economic goals.
So things like protecting wildlife habitats or those sensitive areas near rivers,
Mm.
riparian zones. That's actually part of the plan.
Exactly, that's integral. The focus is optimizing the forests for both things, capturing and storing carbon long-term and producing timber sustainably. Recognizing, the world needs renewable building materials, but doing it responsibly within that bigger ecological picture.
This really highlights how the thinking around timberland value is changing, isn't it? It's way more than just the wood itself now.
Precisely. I mean, the traditional reasons to invest were always there. It holds up well against inflation. You get regular income from timber sales, and it doesn't usually move in lockstep with stocks and bonds, which is good for diversification.
Right, the classic arguments.
But now, these environmental benefits, like carbon capture, supporting biodiversity, cleaner water, even jobs in rural areas, and providing renewable materials, they're becoming really significant factors. Investors are actively valuing them.
And John Gilliland, the CEO over at Campbell Global, he seemed to capture that shift well. He said investors want sustainably managed forests that provide income, value appreciation, and contribute positively to climate solutions.
That quote sums it up perfectly, doesn't it? This broader, more holistic appeal.
It really does.
And it shows that powerful combination, right? Campbell Global's decades of actual on-the-ground forestry experience mixed with this growing investor demand for investments that tick both the financial and the environmental boxes.
So this big fund's success, it's not happening in a vacuum, is it? It's probably part of a bigger wave we're seeing.
Oh, absolutely. You have to see this fund's success in that wider context. There's this major growing interest from big institutions in what people are calling natural capital.
Natural capital, right?
And just generally in real scalable climate solutions.
Yep.
As climate change becomes more urgent, investors are actively looking for places to put money that offer decent returns and have a provable positive environmental effect.
And Campbell Global's track record must give J.P. Morgan a real edge here. I mean, managing over $10 billion in assets, overseeing 1.4 million acres worldwide. That's serious scale.
That scale and that depth of hands-on expertise are, well, invaluable. It gives investors a lot of confidence knowing the team running the show has a long proven history in managing these complex forests sustainably. You can't just conjure up that kind of experience overnight.
It's interesting, too, thinking about how this private money fits with public efforts.
Yeah.
We've seen governments making pledges, too, haven't we?
Yes, definitely. You had the Global Forest Finance Pledge aiming for, $12 billion in public funds for forests between 2021 and 2025.
Right.
And here in the U.S., the USDA recently put $1.5 billion towards conservation and climate-friendly farming and forestry.
So J.P. Morgan's fund is like a big private sector piece complementing those public efforts.
Exactly. It's a really significant private contribution alongside what governments are doing to tackle climate change through better forest management and conservation.
So looking forward then, based on this fundraise being so successful, what does it suggest about where this kind of investing is heading?
Well, the really strong interest we saw here suggests the momentum behind these climate-aligned forestry investments isn't just going to continue. It might actually pick up speed.
Do you think so?
I do. As more big institutions formally adopt these dual goals, good financial returns and measurable positive environmental impact, it seems likely we'll see even more capital flowing into sustainable timberland and, similar natural capital strategies.
And for JP Morgan Asset Management itself, this fund must be a pretty significant achievement on a couple of fronts.
Oh, for sure. It definitely boosts their alternative investment offerings, gives their clients more diversification options, but it also really strengthens their overall sustainability profile, their ESG credentials, which are increasingly important. By bringing Campbell Global's deep knowledge into their platform, they've basically built this really powerful base for doing more in this whole climate-focused investing space.
Okay, so wrapping things up, this $1.5 billion close for the Forest and Climate Solutions Fund 2, it really does feel like maybe a milestone moment for sustainable forestry investing.
It really does feel significant, yeah. Blowing past their target like that, pulling in such a wide range of global investors, it just highlights this growing recognition that um, well-managed forests are both solid financial assets and crucial environmental ones for fighting climate change.
And that blended approach seems key, isn't it? Actively going after both the timber production and those climate benefits, like carbon storage.
Precisely. That seems to be core to its appeal. It puts the fund right at that sweet spot where investors are increasingly chasing good returns while making a tangible positive impact.
So yeah, this fundraise, it definitely seems to validate JP Morgan buying Campbell Global, but it also sends a pretty strong signal, maybe, that natural capital is hitting the mainstream as a serious asset class for institutions, especially when you look at that $2.3 billion total figure.
Agreed, totally. It suggests this part of the market is maturing. There's a growing understanding of the kind of vital role that well-managed natural resources can play, both in investment portfolios and in tackling huge global challenges like climate change.
It really leaves you wondering about the longer-term ripple effects. You know, how this surge of interest in funds like this might eventually change not just investment playbooks, but maybe even how we manage land, and perhaps even our whole relationship with the natural world itself. Something to think about.